welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing a January wrap-up, which is exciting because I haven't done just like 1 month of a wrap-up in like probably about a year, so that's cool. I don't have to talk about like 20 books, but January was like my best reading month maybe ever. Like, not only in the number of books, but in how much I liked the books. I don't think I rated anything under a 4-star, which is like incredible. I read 8 books in January and my average rating was a 4.65, which is like insane. I feel like having an average rating above like a 4 or 4.1 is just like, you're being greedy, you're God's favorite. So yeah, so it was a really, really good reading month. And I'm going to talk about the books. I was like, okay, so one of my goals for this year is to kind of read a lot of books that are on kind of my pile of shame. I believe I stole that from someone. Well, once I figure out who, I will link their channel in the description because it's just such a funny name for it. Where the books where like you kind of soft DNF, or you read a chapter and then we're like, oh my God, like I'm not smart enough for this book right now. Or sometimes you start a book and you get 30% into it and you're like, if I read this now, it's gonna be a 3.5, but if I wait until I'm in the mood, it could be a favorite. So you like stop it. Or it's like everybody loves this book and you don't wanna give up on it even though you think you might hate it. That definitely happens sometimes. So one of my goals for the year is to try and finish all of those. I feel like I have about, at the beginning of the year, I would say I probably had like 6 to 8 books that have like a bookmark in them, like, or that on Storygraph it says like currently reading, that I actually really want to finish. So I was like, let's start the year with one of those that I feel like I'm gonna really like, because the only reason that I stopped was just because I didn't kind of have like the brain capacity for it. So that is The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, which is like obviously a philosophy book. And I started this, I wanna say fall of 2023, and I would read a little bit of it every week or so. I'd read a couple pages, and then in kind of about early 2024, I just stopped having the brain capacity for it at all. And I had been like really taking my time with it and underlining and looking up words and writing little notes and everything. And I didn't want to just like half-ass it and just like technically read it with my eyes, but not really understand it. So I was like, I think I'm really gonna love it. I was really enjoying it. And I wanted to start the year with it. So I read that, and I love philosophy. I would say I don't really know how to describe what this book is about because it's just like a philosophical text, but the back says that it's one of the most influential philosophical texts of the 20th century. It's a crucial exposition of existentialist thought influenced by works such as Don Juan and the novels of Kafka. Presents a meditation on suicide, the question of living or not living in a universe devoid of order or meaning. So basically it talks about kind of existentialism and absurdism and this idea that the world has no meaning, but that is kind of the meaning. I don't like, it's a little complicated, but I think it's really good. I took a lot of philosophy in college and I really enjoyed it. I was almost a philosophy minor, but just didn't want to take all the required classes for it, so I didn't actually become a minor. But yeah, I gave it a 4.5. I don't know. I really, really enjoyed it. It probably could be a 5-star, but I think that because it took me a while and hurt my brain sometimes, I gave it a 4.5. But yeah, I really liked it, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for like to get into reading more philosophy, but definitely like bring a dictionary and be prepared to take it slow. Oh, the lighting is so strange. It's like such a gloomy day and I should probably put on my ring light, but I just don't feel like being blinded today. So whatever. Then I was listening to an audiobook called Decolonizing Wellness by Dahlia Kinsey, which is just, it's basically about decolonizing wellness. obviously. It just kind of is a criticism of the idea that so much of like wellness culture and self-help and all of that stuff that has really become like a thing in the last decade is very straight white focused, and that doesn't necessarily deal with especially the like all like the racism and the different beauty standards and all of that like BIPOC people have to go like through, and LGBTQ people and just all that. So it was definitely more of like a deconstruction of that, and then kind of here's how to approach wellness as a person who doesn't fit into the ideas of like Instagram influencer smoothie girl type of thing. It was really good. It was a lot on, yeah, just the racism inherent in the wellness industry and all of that. I felt like a lot of it like wasn't for me, so it was very like educational and ways to like help people in my life and understand people in my life. But I do think that it was very educational, and I'm glad I read it because I think that it will help make me like a better friend, and also like I want to work in psychology, so there's just a lot of decolonizing our brains that needs to happen just in the world in order to give help to people who are not straight white men, basically. But yeah, so I didn't rate it, but I enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it, like especially if you are like a person of color who's looking for some advice. There were a lot of like journal prompts, which I feel like is good, but they weren't really relevant to me, and I also don't like journaling. But yeah, I recommend it. Then I was like, another book from my pile of shame was If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I started this book in January of 2023, and I was like listening to the audiobook a little bit, and I didn't like the audio narrator, and then I was just, I don't know if I was in the wrong headspace or what the deal was, but I abandoned it on, yeah, January 6th of 2023 at 48%. So I just fully abandoned it. And I was like, I don't want to get rid of it because so many people whose opinions I trust and who we agree on a lot of things like love this. This is one of their favorite books of all time. And so I kept it, and I was like, someday I'll be like, let's read it. And honestly, when I picked it up, I expected to read another 10% and then just fully give up on it, fully DNF it, be like, get this shit out of my house. And that did not happen. I apparently stopped reading it right before it gets good. So this book it's like a dark academia book, and it follows a group of like, I think they're like college kids studying like Shakespeare at some fancy liberal arts college in like Minnesota or something, somewhere in like the Great Lakes region where it's like cold. And they're like, you start the book with like this guy getting out of prison for like a murder, but you're like pretty sure he didn't do it because he's like the main character, but he's very much like an unreliable narrator. Most of the chapters are like flashbacks to when they were in school, but then there are some in the modern timeline where he's like kind of finally telling the whole truth and all of that. So, because like he got out, he can't. But yeah, so you know there's like a murder, and in the flashbacks you are following them through kind of the fall semester leading up to the death. And it's one of those things where it's like, it kind of looks like an accident, but they also kind of are all involved in it. So there's a bit of like a cover up and a bit of a, you know, one of those things. I feel like that's like kind of classic dark academia setup. They love murdering people. They love getting all the students in on covering it up, and they love lying, and they love unreliable narrators. My problem with the first 50% of the book is that there's the main character, Oliver, and then a lot of the other characters blur together. Like there are 3 girls, and they're not, one of them, because you meet her in like the present day timeline, she's a little more fleshed out to me. One of them is very much just kind of like a girl that everybody wants to hook up with, and then the other girl's just the guy everybody hates cousin, who like she's like sweet or whatever, but like that's really her only personality trait. And then like there's the 4 guys, like Richard, James, Alexander, and Oliver's the main character, and they have like, I don't know, I feel like in the first beginning of the book they have just like one personality trait. I was reading it and I was like, I don't even care for the narrator that much. I like James, I guess that's it. And they like quote Shakespeare all the time, and you're just like, what? Nobody talks like this. Nobody's like this. Like, they're pretentious, but nobody is like this. And then the murder happens, and then basically immediately after that, it like gets so much more interesting, and all the characters become, maybe there's one less now, so all the characters become more interesting and more unique. And then I really realized that it's doing this thing where it's like it's like act 1, act 2, act 3, you know, and they're doing Shakespeare plays throughout this, and I realized how much of this book is like a Shakespeare tragedy. And then it kind of like, something in my brain just like clicked, and like I suddenly understood, because I'm like, well, when you think of like an ensemble cast in Shakespeare, a lot of times like there are some characters who it takes you a while to like figure out, or they do only have like one personality trait or whatever. But yeah, but then by the end I feel like you really love them. I cried. I literally finished this book and I was like, I hated the first half so much that like that on its own would get like maybe a 3-star based on writing alone, but then the second half of the book is a 5-star, and I was like, I don't know how to rate this, because I'm thinking about this book nonstop. Like, this is gonna be one of my favorite books of the year, but I hated the first half. So I was like, I ended up giving it a 4.5, because it was like anything lower than that feels like it just doesn't adequately, the end of the book is more important, right? And I've seen some people say that like the twist is predictable, but even if it is, I don't feel like it matters, because it's not really about like the facts of the twist, it's about like the emotional components. And I just really loved it, and I'm very glad that I decided to read it, and everyone was right. And yeah, I definitely think that like it's a long way to push through to get to the part where it like switches and gets really good, but I genuinely believe it's worth it. And I mean, I'm sure some people also like the beginning, but yeah, my like girlfriend felt the same way about the first 40 to 50%, and then loved the second half. So, you know, I think that's just kind of this book's deal. And if you think of like Shakespeare plays, it's like, yeah, like act 3 is when it starts to get like really good. So I guess that's accurate. Then I got a library book that's Mechanic Shop Femme's Guide to Car Ownership by Chaya Milchton. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that very, very wrong. But basically it's just a comprehensive guide to car ownership for female and femme type of people, especially the author's like a lesbian. And it's just kind of teaches you a lot of things that as a non-man, you don't learn a lot. And there's just a feeling of like, I know when I go into like a mechanic shop, sometimes I feel like I'm gonna get screwed. I very much utilize the like gonna call my dad type of thing. Like my stepdad like genuinely knows like a ton about cars, so he is very helpful for that. Like I bought a car in May, and it was like a very overwhelming experience. Like thankfully I had like a checklist, and I really knew what I wanted. So when I like was in that car, I was like, this is it. And ended up with like a younger salesman, so it wasn't dealing with like the old kind of sexism thing you can deal with. But I also brought my stepdad to actually buy the car because I feel like it's better to have a man there. But after reading this book, I'm like, okay, I feel a lot better about things. I just read the chapters that were relevant to me, so I didn't rate it, but I definitely recommend it, especially if you are looking to buy a new car. There's a lot of stuff about insurance and all of that stuff about like finding a good mechanic, a lot of stuff about the kind of maintenance you can do yourself, which is good. There's surprising things, like she's like, don't bother doing an oil change yourself, actually, which I feel like is one that when I grew up, there was this idea that you should know how to do that, but there's like a cabin air filter. She's like, you can change that yourself. And I was like, I never would have thought that. So yeah, so I'm glad I read it. Got some good information, but mostly the most important information was to find a good mechanic, and I think I have that. So yeah, but I definitely recommend it. Then I read, I got it from the library, The Favorites by Lane Fargo. I've never read a Lane Fargo, but this just sounded good. Some people I know who aren't like romance novel people like really liked it, and I heard of it as kind of like a figure skating fan fiction of those Canadian ice dancers that everybody was like obsessed with in like 2014 or whatever. But it's not that at all. Not that at all. So it follows this girl, like Katerina Kat, who basically her whole life she wanted to be in the Olympics and an ice dancer in the Olympics, and her skating partner and at points romantic partner Heath, and just kind of he's like in foster care, and all this stuff is kind of like from the rough side of town type of deal, you know, like, and so when the book begins, they kind of already have like a romance. They're like teenagers and they're really good. She's like incredible and he's really good, and he wants this dream like for her more than he wants it for himself. But it just follows them throughout their skating career as they are partners or not partners, the drama, the insanity of the skating world. It is told kind of, I guess, mixed media, but it's basically it's like the 10-year anniversary of the Olympic Games they were in, and they're doing like a documentary on what happened at the Olympic Games. Some big scandal happened and you don't know what it is until you get there, but Kat is like telling her own story, and then it's interspersed with like interviews from the documentary. And yeah, it's very Taylor Jenkins Reid, like Daisy Jones and the Six meets Carrie Soto is Back, except one of my big problems with Carrie Soto is Back is that I felt like she didn't kind of, I don't know, fully embrace her being like a bit of a bitch. Like, I just felt like we were like told she was a bitch, but I didn't really, her actions didn't really support that. She just was kind of very focused on winning, but it's like in sports, like everybody is. But I felt like this girl was just a bitch and just was great, and it was messy and it was so much fun, and I really loved it. I wasn't actually crazy about the romantic relationship, so like thankfully I went in like not expecting it to be a romance. I was expecting it to be like a sports book kind of, you know, like, and like they didn't really get me until near the end with the romance. So don't go into it looking for a romance. Go into it looking for a sports drama. I thought her relationships with like other people were very interesting. I thought the characters were really, really interesting. I really loved her. It made me cry. Yeah, it was just really good. I want it to be like a movie or a mini series or something, because I want to see like the skating. Like watching it and like not being able to see these skates is like awful. But I didn't realize until I was done with the book that it is Wuthering Heights. Like the characters' names are literally Kat and Heath. But I haven't, to be fair, I haven't read Wuthering Heights. I just like read the Spark Notes in college and wrote a paper on it, or high school, yeah. So that makes sense. But knowing that, I'm like, if you like Wuthering Heights, like I think you will love this. It is messy and fun, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was like Carrie Soto is Back, but better. And yeah, and I'm like a huge like Taylor Jenkins Reid fan. She's like an auto-buy author for me, so that's a huge compliment. And I gave it a 4.25 because it wasn't like perfect, you know, but it was a little bit more enjoyable than a 4 is how I would put it for myself. Then I listened to the audiobook of Enchantment, Awakening Wonder in an Anxious Age by Catherine May, which was just, I've been reading all of her books. That's my last one, listening to the audiobook. That was kind of, it was a weird one because it was definitely my least favorite of the 3. It was very like focused on like COVID. I think it was kind of about like 2020, 2021. So the idea of kind of trying to find enchantment and beauty in the simple moments in life when you don't have kind of the normal things, and you've realized that like the childhood wonder of life is gone. And yeah, so I liked that element of it. There was this really cute like story she told about like being at the beach with her kid and having all these ideas of like what we're gonna do at the beach, but like he just wants to play with the seaweed or whatever, and like how that's actually like a good thing that reminds you of what's like important, and the idea that like anything can be magical. So I really enjoyed that, but overall it wasn't as good as Wintering is just by far her best book, and I would definitely recommend that. But I'm glad I read it. It's, I think, yeah, especially this time of year, January and February are really hard months, so it's good to remember to like find little bits of magic as much as you can, you know? So yeah, glad I read it. Then I read, also from the library, My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, which I've wanted to read forever. I read Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires about like 2 years ago, year and a half now, and like loved it, and 5 stars. And I was like, everybody talks about loving like My Best Friend's Exorcism. So I was like, okay. I was a little worried about the horror because like I'm not always great with horror, and he loves like a freaky little like gross bit or whatever. There's some bug stuff in this and some vomiting, if that stuff bothers you. Bug stuff freaks me out, vomiting doesn't. But it basically follows these 2 girls who they became like best friends in, I think it was probably like 3rd through 5th grade, somewhere around then. And then follows them a little bit like through the backstory of their friendship. And then in high school, they're like 15, and they have this weekend, they have to go to like a party, like just the 4 of their friends, they have like a sleepover party thing, and take acid. And then the main character's best friend, they come back and she starts acting weird. And yeah, and for a while you're just like, is she just like being 15? Sometimes being 15 just sucks, and sometimes she's possessed by the devil, you know? But what I really loved about it, I gave it 5 stars because it's just a book about friendship, just a book about girlhood and teenagerhood and female friendship. And just, I really love, it's so crazy because so often when a book is written by a man, you're like, this book was written by a man, like these women were written by men, and like you don't understand it. And like, obviously there's an element that he doesn't understand, but just so much of like the weirdness of being a teenager, and like, yeah, like skin problem insecurities, and there's discussion of like trigger warning and discussion for like sexual assault, and just like the sensitivity and the way that like, it just felt like the way they reacted to things around that are just like teenage girl type of problems was just so accurate. It was just like the heaviness of like your friends not wanting to sit with you at lunch, like being so devastating. And you know, like, and I'm not a huge fan of the like girlhood idea because I think it can be very trans exclusionary and stuff, and there's not some magical thing of girlhood. But I think that whatever your gender identity is in relation to girlhood is part of the large spectrum that makes girlhood such a mess. It's just like a messy time in the life of a non-man, and like a non-cis man. And like, I think that that is, I don't know, books that really explore that, and books written by a man that are really able to explore that, are just really impressive. So yeah, I definitely recommend it if you're looking for books about friendship and can handle some horror. And yeah, it made me cry, and I just thought it was so beautiful, and he has now become like a favorite author. I am ignoring the Final Girl support group. That doesn't exist. That wasn't for me. But everything else is like, wow, shut up. So yeah, 5 stars, holy shit. And the final book that I read, I like rushed to finish it on January 31st, was All's Well by Mona Awad, which is my first Mona Awad. And this follows this woman, Miranda, who prior to the start of the book, she was like a theater actress, and then she had like a fall and got injured, and it's just been getting worse. She's like a theater professor at a college, and it's really hard. She starts the book like literally like the first scene is her laying on the floor of her office, just like in excruciating pain, like not sure if she's gonna be able to move. And her theater kids, they suck. They're 18 to 21 or whatever, like everybody sucks at that age. And they want to do Macbeth, and she wants to do All's Well That Ends Well, and it's such like a thing. Like she was in All's Well That Ends Well like when she met her husband, and she played like Helen, and she was like this role of a lifetime. That was incredible. And now like her and her husband are like divorced, and her life is falling apart, and it's just a mess. And you just like really feel for this woman's pain, and then it just goes off the rails in the best way and goes into like magical realism fantasy thing. There are a lot of like Shakespeare allusions. She meets these like characters that are like, we can help you, and they're kind of like the witches in Macbeth, or just witches in Shakespeare in general. And yeah, I just loved it. And I feel like she's one of those people that like narrators that people call like unlikable, but I thought she was so likable. I was rooting for her. Like, these kids suck, and more importantly than like the kids sucking, because kids suck, was just like the doctors suck, and some of her friends suck. Like she doesn't have a lot of friends, but like her best friend at like in college, another professor like kind of said something messed up to her. And yeah, it's just, as someone who struggles with some chronic pain issues, just the way it feels to go to doctors and to hear it's in your head, or have you tried yoga, or all that bullshit, and you're just like, it hurts more. Like, that thing you did made me feel worse. So, and nothing helps. And yeah, sometimes I wish I could just ruin people's lives about my pain because they're being assholes about it. And yeah, and I thought that it was, I don't know, really, really, really good. And Mona Awada's an incredible author. Like, the writing is just incredible. I can't wait to read more from her. Like, and yeah, it's just incredible. And I definitely recommend it if you are down to read someone who has become kind of a bitch because she's in pain. If you think that that could be a sympathetic character, and that characters don't always need to be like perfect little happy angels, and that disability sucks and it's okay for it to suck and for people to be in shitty moods because they're in pain, then I would definitely recommend it. And yeah, so that was an incredible reading month. Like, literally, I gave so many books 5 stars, like 2 5 stars in a month, and like 2 4.5s. Like, what? That's crazy. So that was so exciting, and I'm hopeful for February. February is always like a weird month for me, so I probably won't read 8 books again. But yeah, I'm very happy with this month and excited to see what else this reading year has in store. So how was January for you? I know it can be, a lot of people struggle with reading at the beginning of the year. I was just in the mood to just go for it. So I hope that it's been a good month for you. And if it's not, that you have an incredible rest of the year, and that we can all find multiple 5 stars and all read weird books that help us feel seen. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.